So I was minding my business back in January when my friend Sam approached me and asked me if I'd like to participate in the Brackies 2021 Game Jam. And I said yes. I was then told, good luck fam. Wait, what? The aim of the game is simple: collect all the Goobers and reach the exit. As you get more Goobers, you grow bigger. Big slimes are slow, can't jump as high and can't get onto certain gaps, but can press buttons that smaller slimes can't. Collecting yellow Goobers lets you double jump, and purple Goobers flip gravity. So I opened up Unity and made a cube. Yeah, a cube. It slides around and jumps. Not particularly slime-like, so I decided to add a little bounce each time he moves. Look at him go! However, this proved kind of clunky and made jumping hard to time, so I scrapped it and decided to look into something else. After pondering to myself in the void for a while, I settled upon curves. And now we have this. This looks and plays much better than before, though it's still a bit rough around the edges visually, but that can easily be fixed. So I did that. With the curves wrapped up, I then added a small angular rotation when the slime was in the air, just as a neat visual flair, and gave him a nice level to jump around in to demonstrate this. With the movement all done and dusted, we then needed some graphics, so I rocked up to Sam and got a slime graphic tossed my way. Then I gave him some eyes, and now we have this. Next on the list, more gameplay. I added the 3 types of pickups into the test level and added a placeholder exit door that turns green after all the Goobers are picked up. To cap off day 1, I gave the yellow and purple pickups their own unique particle effects and added some particles inside the main Goober to show how many the player has collected. So overall, a pretty good start to the jam, I'd say. Day 2 was a short one, mostly adding a few bits and pieces and polishing bits up. So starting off, I added a button. You can press it after collecting all of the slimes in the test level, but after implementing it, I realised that the implementation for ground detection was scuffed. So I redid it all with a line cast instead. Much better. Next on the agenda, the particles. In day 1, the particles inside the main Goober were a bit vague, you couldn't really tell what they were. So I messed around with the sprites, and now the Goobers inside the player are much easier to distinguish from one another. After that, I went to Tesco and restocked my gamer supplies. Very nice. Then going back to Goobers, I added the door and button graphics provided to me by Sam, and that's pretty much it for day 2. Pretty slow day, as I said before, but hey, now we're getting to the fun parts. With the majority of the gameplay now in place, it was time to start adding all the other bits and pieces that build off of that. So starting off, a second type of button, this one running on a timer. I also added some signs that specify the weight required to press the button, these graphics of course provided by Sam. Next up, a reset function. With a game like this, resetting levels is absolutely essential, as there are instances where you can mess up. All it is right now is just resetting the slime back to its spawn position and setting the slime pickups to the active once again, as well as resetting buttons and closing the door. Then I added a hazard block which resets the level if you touch it, and also made the door itself open up once all the slimes are collected. Sam then provided the border of the game's levels, which I then put into the test level and used to create an early version of the main menu, using the same animation curves in the main Goober to make the title stretch and squish. However, I didn't think the implementation of the border through properly, and whoops! So I fixed it. Up until this point, the game was being built with a 16:9 aspect ratio, which meant that any other aspect ratio would mess up the camera, and thus the level. So I implemented a script to fix that issue and then resumed with the game. Sam then tossed a background my way, which I then added to the main menu and the test level. Nice. Day 3 was capped off with the creation of the first level, a simple tutorial designed to get the player used to the controls and the idea of pressing buttons. With the foundations in place, day 4 involved polishing up what's there and then working on the levels a bit. Starting off with a simple main menu, with a simple play button, and sounds, as well as a slimy, squishy level transition to mask the loading of levels. The tutorial level now also has some graffiti graphics with the controls, which is an idea me and Sam came up with useless propaganda-esque posters being drawn normally, while the helpful hints and tips are scribbled on the walls with green graffiti in an art style that doesn't match the posters at all. With this concept in mind, I designed some buttons and some graffiti for the main menu, much nicer than that Unity stop play button. And then I made the tutorial graffiti a lot larger and more noticeable to the player, with the controls taking separate sides and the slime jumping onto the button a lot more noticeable. Then I got to work on level 2, which introduces the player to the idea of picking up the Goobers to unlock the exit. Next, it was level 3, which introduces the concept of growing larger with the more Goobers you obtain, and the concept of resetting levels. Level 4 then introduces you to the timed buttons and the game's main hazard, the slime pit. And that's it for day 4. Nothing much like the other days, but now we're really getting somewhere with the game. Day 5 started off with tweaks to the doors. If the player remains inside them when their associated timers run out, they do not close until the player leaves said door, as an added safety feature to prevent physics bugs. Sam suggested redoing level 4, placing a Goober on the right and the door on the left to add further emphasis on the timer, as there's now a risk of getting trapped in there should you take too long. I also added new graphics to the slime pit, giving it a nice wavy pattern. Next up, the UI. I added a counter to the top left of the screen, detailing how many of each slime the player has picked up. When a jump slime is used, it turns transparent to show that you cannot use it again, and when you land, it returns to normal, and you can use the double jump. After that, I worked on levels 5 and 6, and here's level 6. It requires a bit of thinking regarding how you can actually get all of the slimes and that jump slime. After that, it was smooth sailing up until level 8, the introduction of the grav slime. In fact, I think I'll save the surprise for you lot, actually. By day 6, the game was pretty much finished. I had developed the final level, level 11, and replaced the original doors with some new graphics, and added some new sounds for them, as well as the exit. Afterwards, it was time to implement the game's music, which you're hearing now. Sam passed the music files on to me, and I began implementing it, as well as additional main menu functionality and volume sliders to go alongside it, in case you want to turn it off if you're a heretic. It's the final day. The game is pretty much ready to go at this point. All I had to do now was add a few little tweaks and fixes, and we were good to go. I added some additional collision boxes to the buttons to allow the player to walk on them, to make navigation a bit smoother and more convenient. And then after that, a little graphical touch-up added with some level numbers for each stage, should you want to revisit a particular level at a later date. We then submitted the game to itch.io, but the launch didn't go so smooth. The camera kept messing up if you switched between full screen and windowed, so I had to redesign the game's camera script to make sure it happens all the time rather than at just the start of a level, and then tweak the game's HTML files to make sure you couldn't switch aspect ratios on the fly. And that's about it for day 7. The game is now out, and all we have to do is wait and see how it goes. Two weeks later, the voting process for the jam ended, and we came 229th, almost in the top 10%, having gone up against almost 1,900 other games. For our first attempt at a jam, me and Sam were really happy with this result. People seem to really enjoy the game, with all the responses throughout the development and voting period being positive, which is something we're super chuffed about. Thank you to everyone who voted for and played the game and helped playtest it. It's been a fun ride. And special thanks to the Azalea staff for playtesting it live on stream, and thank you to Digital Sphere, who also playtested the game and helped out with some of the HTML stuff when we first released the game. Both streams were very fun to watch. The links to their Twitch channels will be in the description, alongside Sam's channel. As much as I've talked about what I've done for this project, Sam has definitely also done a large chunk of work, doing the majority of the artwork, level designs, and the music, whereas I handled most of the development. If you want to try out Goobers for yourself, it is available to download on itch.io and IndieDB, links in the description. Should there be enough interest in this game, maybe we'll do a continuation at some point, who knows. And of course, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, then like it, and if you want to see more later on down the line, maybe consider subscribing.